Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Model Moon Simulator. Pull out the sword of stone at the beginning. Ron traveled through the lunar world and became a disciple of Herm Aro2. He was born with a low-quality magic circuit and could only make a living by eating the soft rice of his childhood sweetheart, Rin Yuansaka.Unexpectedly, this world line will be destroyed in a month. Goddess Ishtar summons the heavenly bull to cleanse the surface of the earth. Fortunately, with the arrival of the simulator, Ron embarked on a new life. From the Holy Camelot to the One Heart Uruk, and then to the Battle of Shenzhou Westward journey, your reputation is known to everyone. You are the Holy King who runs through the past, present, and future, and also a loving and knowledgeable person of divine love. You have drawn a sword from a stone, and also plucked wild peaches to give to the monkey girl who was trapped at the foot of the Five Elements mountain. Looking back, your life has been magnificentIshtar, Elle. Ron, didn't you say you only love the two of us? Who are they? Daimao Wang. It's clear that I came first. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Are you serious about this entry? Seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The clock tower is located in the busiest part of downtown London. Meanwhile, this is also one of the academic holy sites in the hearts of magicians around the world. It is as famous as Wandering Sea, Atlas House, and the most mysterious Oriental magic organization Spiral Hall. However, although the clock tower is a member of the Magic Association along with the first two, its relationship is very cold. No one is convinced, everyone thinks they are the most powerful one. There is quite a feeling of being the boss and my second son. Ron and his childhood sweetheart, Rin Yuansaka, are currently enrolled in the clock tower and have become disciples of Elle too. The two of them came from the Far East to London together and rented a nice house. Although life may not be as carefree and free as that of children from noble families, it is still relatively fulfilling. Professor Weber is a very responsible teacher, perhaps because he thinks of his past self and Kenneth. Even though Ron's magic circuit quality was poor, he never gave up on him. Instead, he became more focused and guided Ron onto the path of a theoretical magician. Unlike Ron, the genius Rin Yuansaka quickly rose to prominence at the clock tower. At this pace, it may not be long before she can have her own place in this cruel land. Ron felt genuinely happy for Rin Yuansaka from the bottom of his heart. After all, how fragrant is soft rice. With Rin Yuansaka present, as long as we don't commit suicide, there is a certain level of safety guarantee. As a traveler, Ron doesn't have much ambition. He knows how much he weighs, how much he enters and exits the source, and doesn't participate in dangerous things like the Holy Grail War. I just want to spend my whole life peacefully with Rin Yuansaka. It's best to have a new nest of little Ron and Rin come out. When old, return to China or Dongmu, hold the hand of your lover, and walk the last journey of life. However, it is such a small and simple wish that has become a luxury in this perilous world. Because Ron's golden finger came and told him that the world would be destroyed in a month. More precisely, it is not the destruction of the world, but the destruction of modern humanity. But for Ron, that doesn't make much difference, does it? In the Holy Grail War in Shuyuan City, the goddess Ishtar summons the heavenly bull, cleanses the surface, and reconstructs the divine realm. On Saturday, clock tower students are on vacation. In a somewhat old apartment building on the outskirts of London, a young man with black hair leaned against his bed, dumbfounded as he listened to the simulator telling him the news. Yes. The cold sound of the simulator's machinery echoed directly from the brain. In addition to the extinction of the heavenly bull, through the calculation of this simulator, there is a 90% probability that the world line will experience a series of disasters such as human burning, the resurrection of Zhuyu, and the invasion of external gods. For the host's personal safety, this simulator recommends that you immediately simulate. Tired, destroy it. Ron really wants to curse, emulator, are you still speaking human language? The bowl of heaven is just that. Human reason burning, resurrection of Zhu, and the heaviest invasion of external gods are things that normal humans can deal with. It's better to just die, maybe we can travel again. I hope this time, I can travel to a peaceful daily world. The host doesn't have to lose heart. With the help of this emulator, you can definitely overcome numerous hardships and laugh until the end. It seemed to hear Ron's voice, and the simulator encouraged him with its rigid mechanical sound. Ron rolled his eyes and thought to himself, you don't have to face it, of course you're speaking lightly. However, waiting for death is not Ron's personality, even if this body has poor magic skills, it doesn't matter. Anyway, there is a simulator to help with cheating. Deep Blue, give me some extra. After previous research, Ron has roughly understood the operating logic of the simulator. Firstly, starting the simulation requires a fate point. 10,000 destiny points can be simulated once. And the fate point is obtained by changing the world line. That is to say, only by going crazy in the simulation can we obtain enough fate points to start the next simulation. In addition, there are entries available for Ron to choose from before the simulation starts, and the entry talent does not apply in the real world, but only in the simulation. And it cannot be retained. It depends entirely on the face what entries can be generated in the next simulation. But after the simulation is over, he can choose various abilities or items obtained in the simulation life. The higher the score, the more choices can be made. Top S.level rating, you can choose 3 samples. I hate luck games the most. Ron sighed. The functionality of emulators is indeed very powerful, but there are also drawbacks. Don't misunderstand, it's not that the emulator has its drawbacks, but that Ron himself has his own shortcomings. His luck has always been very bad. This emulator will give the host a simulation opportunity as a gift. Do you want to start now? Novice benefits are understandable. Wait a moment, the last question is the simulation time synchronized with the real time? Not synchronized, no matter how many years the host has spent in the simulation, only 1 second will pass in reality. It's okay then, let's get started. Ron let go of his worries, as long as the time is not synchronized, then everything is easy to say. Ding. Please choose your entry, 3 out of 5. Blind, Blue. You have lost light, but gained extremely keen intuition. Sick Beauty, Blue. Even a weak chicken like you can only rely on appearance to eat, right? Orphan, Green. Standard accessory for travelers, parents offering sacrifices to heaven in exchange for a certain amount of luck boost. Big Stomach King, White. There's nothing to say, you're eating even more. Mentality, Blue. Have you ever heard that fools have blessings? What? Simulator, would you like to see what your entries are all about? Ron is numb. Isn't it said that there is a 5% chance of a good golden entry and a 25% chance of a purple entry? You're deceiving me, right? Don't mention Ron, even the emulator is in bamboo. It really didn't expect its host to be so unlucky. But now that all the entries have been refreshed, they cannot be changed. No matter how outrageous, we can only make do with it. I knew it would be like this. From childhood to adulthood, Ron played luck games such as playing poker or guessing, and never won a single game against Rin Yuansaka. So, he has actually become accustomed to it. Anyway, having something is better than not having it, right? And there are a few of them, without considering the negative impact, the effect is also quite good. Firstly, the term, Big Stomach King, can be ruled out, and secondly, the term, mentally impaired. Although it is blue, its negative impact is too great. Maybe in the simulation, I will really become a fool. So, the choice is already very clear. After a brief analysis, Ron made a choice. I choose blind people, sickly beauties, and orphans. Ding. The dull mechanical sound of the simulator rang out in my mind again. The entry has been selected and is loading a brand new life. Please wait. P.S. For flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. Where is love at first sight? It's nothing but. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. In the 5th century AD, you were born into a small aristocratic family in Thaileries. Unlike ordinary babies who have just been born and have skin wrinkles that look a bit ugly and cute, your skin is fair and smooth, delicate and adorable like a ceramic doll. Your parents are sincerely delighted with your arrival. In their eyes, you are a treasure bestowed upon them by heaven. Soft golden hair, like golden silk, is irresistible. Your big lake blue eyes exude an innate sense of shattered beauty. It's like a serene orchid blooming alone in an empty valley after the wind and rain. Your appearance is so beautiful that words cannot describe it. Anyone who envies you will feel ashamed after seeing you with their own eyes. Perhaps heaven does not allow such a perfect person like you to appear, as it mercilessly deprives you of light and brings you a fragile physique. You have become a beautiful vase apart from the knowledge in the brain and extraordinary beauty. It is nothing, unable to cultivate swordsmanship and become a respected knight, nor able to learn magic. But your parents don't care. Their greatest expectation for you is just that you can grow up peacefully under this sincere care. You stumbled and grew up to the age of 10. However, in that year, a plague broke out in Taylorville. Your parents accidentally fell ill and persisted for a few days before passing away, leaving you alone to face the scrutiny of surrounding wolves. And wolves, you, who are only 10 years old and physically weak, cannot hold on to this foundation. Fortunately, your parents have already made arrangements and you have been adopted by an old knight named Hector. With the protection of the Hector Knights, those who covet your beauty can only reluctantly stop. Hector's estate is located at the very edge of Taylorville. This estate is very old, with many cracks on the walls. In other places, traces left by the erosion of time can also be clearly seen. Also, because the knight Hector is rigid and adheres to his knightly way, even if he uses a large wheat field, he can't make much money throughout the year. Just raising serfs and raising his very edible adopted son Altolis is a significant expense. Not to mention Hector's parent-child relationship, Kai also has many areas where he needs to spend money. Becoming a knight is not an easy task. It requires persistent and long-term exercise, as well as a resilient spirit. It is normal to get injured from time to time during exercise. Compared to food expenses, in fact, various nutrients and potions are the main expenses. Fortunately, Ron doesn't need it because his fragile physique is simply unable to become a proud knight. Did you hear that? Lily, it seems like we're going to have a new brother in our family again. Having just finished his morning practice, Kai, who was sore all over, completely disregarded his image and sat across from Altoliat disguised as a blonde boy. In a tone that completely did not match his stern face, he chatted gossip with a frown and eyes. A new brother. Altolia was pleasantly surprised. She thought that now she had another person to practice with. As one ages, the body begins to develop. The bloodline of the Red Dragon is increasing Altolia's strength every day. Just practicing with Kai can only have a warmed-up effect and cannot bring too much improvement. Kai could tell at a glance what Mei was thinking, and even he spoke with a contemptuous tone, "Don't think about it. I heard our new brother is Ron." "Ron, do you know? It is said that he is very beautiful, not even comparable to Guinevere, the daughter of King Liaodaquan. His beauty makes even heaven feel jealous of him, casting a curse on him. As a result, Ron was born blind and his body was very weak. If it weren't for luck, he might not have lived to this age at all." Listening to Kai's description, Altolia had a vague image in her heart. She didn't feel disappointed, but became even more curious. To what extent should one be beautiful in order to make heaven feel jealous? Seeing Altolia pondering, Kai smiled and was about to continue talking about the rumors he had heard, but was interrupted by the sound of hooves. Hector rode a tall horse, holding Ron, who was fair to the point of being slightly sickly and occasionally coughing, and came to meet Kay and Altolia. He first dismounted by himself, then gently helped Ron down. It's hard for Kai to imagine that his father, who always has a straight face, would also have such a kind time. Unfortunately, when Hector's gaze turned to Kai, the benevolent tone in his eyes instantly faded and he once again became his usual rigid and serious father. His name is Ron and he will stay with us in the future. Kai, you are already a qualified knight. I hope you can take on the responsibility of taking care of Altolis and Ron in the future. Kai put away his disdainful demeanor in front of Altolia and solemnly promised to take good care of his two younger brothers. Hector's face softened slightly, and he patted Kai's shoulder before leaving under the pretext of something. Leave time for the three younger generations to become familiar with each other. Is this Ron? Altolia quietly looked at the boy in front of her. In the end, it was admitted that Kai did not speak recklessly this time. He is indeed as beautiful as rumored, even wearing a very ordinary pure white linen coat, he still cannot resist the breathtaking beauty of his face. Golden hair is fluffy but not messy, and fair skin seems to drip water with just a pinch. The nose bridge is high and straight, but it does not appear sharp, but instead gives people a gentle feeling. Especially his eyes. Although there is no radiance, it does not appear dim. When looking at him, one can easily sense the tolerance and tranquility in the blue eyes of these two lakes. Looking at Ron like this, Altolia, who had been pretending to be a man, had her heart racing for the first time in her life. She instinctively covered her heart, with a bewildered expression on her face. I am what's going on. Altolia doesn't understand. She stood on the side, wanting to talk to Ron, but dared not approach, afraid of ruining this beauty. So she chose to quietly listen to Kay and Ron talking. Listening and listening, even Altolia herself did not notice, her lips slightly raised, and her eyebrows and eyes were filled with obvious joy. It's just because she heard Ron say she really likes this estate. I really like the kind Hector knight. I also really like Kai. And oneself. P.S. For flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. What is the ideal king? Seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Altolia, who has just turned 12 this year, has reached the age of initial love. However, the girl who has always been trained as the ideal king cannot understand the surging emotions in her heart at this moment. She simply thinks that Ron is very good looking and wants to be closer to him. The clumsy and immature Altolia didn't know how to do it. After thinking for a moment, she decided to imitate Kay and affectionately call Ron her younger brother every day. And she herself is her brother. However, the older brother Altolia seems a bit too clingy. Except for the time spent practicing swordsmanship every day, for the rest of the time, Altolia stayed by Ron's side, like a follower. Because Ron is blind and physically weak, even when taking a shower, Altolia takes the initiative to help and asks Ron if he needs to rub his back himself. More times, Altolia is no longer as excited and shy as before. After realizing that her relationship with Ron had gradually become closer, she became more and more eager to be with him at all times. Even after finishing Merlin's dream teachings at night, she would think of Ron's snow-white skin. So the next morning, the young girl Altolia encountered an awkward physiological reaction for the first time, and she was at a loss to hide that evidence. That indescribable puddle of water made Altolia feel that she had desecrated Ron and was no longer a qualified knight. This made Altolia very uncomfortable, feeling down for several days in a row, and her gaze towards Ron became evasive. Ron noticed something unusual about Elle, and although he didn't know why, he decided to have a good conversation with her. Ron in The Sims carries complete memories, knowing what he needs to do and how to maximize enough points of destiny. Britain is destined to be destroyed, and the decline of the divine generation is unstoppable. To make the most of history, Ron has only two paths to take. 1. Help Votigen to bring the British Isles back to the era of the gods. 2. Help Elle prevent the extinction of Britain. Firstly, there is little need to consider the first path. He didn't know Votigen, and his physical condition was very fragile. Crossing the British Isles to the northernmost cold region in search of Votigen was equivalent to dying. It's not that Votigen will kill Ron, but he can't withstand the harsh weather there. Therefore, Ron can only use the limited knowledge in his mind to help Elle. The decline of the gods cannot be stopped, but the Celtics do not necessarily have to go extinct. As long as people are still alive, inheritance will still exist. Changing dynasties and generations is just a name change. Just like Qin to Han, who dares to say that Han is not the orthodoxy of the Chinese nation. Not an indispensable part of the vast history of China. Everything depends on human factors. Ron has no way out, he can only bravely move forward. It's night, but when Elle left her dream, the sky was already covered in fish belly white. But she didn't feel any drowsiness at all, afraid that after falling asleep, she wouldn't be able to resist blaspheming Ron again throughout Eltolia's life. One can find that this legendary king of Britain is tragic. Merlin is a cheerful person who doesn't care about the survival of Britain. He just wants to see the fun he wants to see. As the father of Elle, King Uther is even more of a qualified monarch. He doesn't care what Elle thinks, all he needs is a tool to lead Britain to defeat the Votigens. This led to Elle not having her own thoughts at all. Everything about her was imposed on her by Merlin and King Uther, as well as the Knights of the Round Table. Elle, who drew the sword of choosing a king, was only 14 years old. The weight of the entire country and all its people was carried by a young girl with her tender shoulders. Perhaps some people would mock Elle for being rigid and inflexible. But Ron, who has been with her for so long, only feels heartbroken. Ron knows that apart from eating and washing up, Elle doesn't even have 3 hours of rest time in a day. Practicing swordsmanship during the day, and being brainwashed and educated by Merlin at night. Merlin always told her to become the Holy King, to become the most perfect knight, to be good to her people, and not to force them to do things they don't want. This is a vague truth. Elle took a comprehensive view, but her limited knowledge and vision prevented her from making correct judgments. Mistakenly taking Merlin's words as truth, therefore, Ron decided to start by changing Eltolia's thinking and reversing the end of Britain's downfall. This is also the main reason why he talked to Elle. Ron calculated the time for Elle to finish her studies and came to the wheat field where she often stayed to find her. Although blind in both eyes, Ron's intuition was very keen, and he was already familiar with the layout of the estate. This not too long road would not defeat him. As for the day and night, it doesn't matter much. Anyway, Ron can't see it either, so there's not much difference. Leaning on a blind cane, Ron groped his way and indeed found Elle leaning against a haystack, gazing up at the starry sky, at the edge of the wheat field. The girl had just taken a shower and was wearing a white nightgown made of linen, with a head of golden half-long hair scattered behind her head. Raise your pure white hands and count how many stars there are in the sky. This is the only entertainment activity for girls, at least until Ron arrives. Elle, you are indeed here. The sudden sound startled Elle, who turned her head and saw a young man who looked even more beautiful under the moonlight. Ah! Is it Ron? You don't make any sound when you walk. I didn't deliberately hide my steps. Ron sat closely against Elle, and the girl who had just taken a shower emitted a faint fragrance. You've been doing something wrong these past few days. I'm not at ease, so I came to take a look, he said. Elle, do you have any worries? Can you tell me? Perhaps I would be a good listener. Elle can't lie. She really wants to say she's okay, but when she saw Ron's serious gaze, she couldn't help feeling anxious. What should she say? Saying that I couldn't help but desecrate you at night. If that's the case, I guess this friendship will come to an end. Elle is not foolish. Can't you change the topic even if you don't know how to lie? She reached out and pinched Ron's soft cheek, gently pulling it out. With a dissatisfied expression, she said, how many times have you said it? You want to call me brother Elle? I'm 2 years older than you. P.S. For flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Merlin, you deserve to die for your sins. Seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Of course you wouldn't call her brother Elle. Leaving aside her true gender, even your psychological age as a person in 2 generations wouldn't be enough for brother to shout out, including Kai, you have never called brother before. On the other hand, Knight Hector, you shout uncle quite fluently, after all, his age is there, and your 2 lifetimes combined age is not as good as him. You don't speak, let Elle pinch your face. My gaze was fixed on her for a moment without moving. In the end, Elle was defeated as a knight, she cannot lie, let alone herself actually. It's like this. Ron, do you think I'm a qualified apprentice knight? Elle withdrew her hand and asked with a wry expression, without speaking directly after asking. The girl looked at Ron eagerly until he said, you are the most serious apprentice knight I have ever seen, before revealing a faint smile, but this little smile was immediately suppressed by Elle, who was really good at suppressing herself. But I feel like I'm still far from qualified. Looking at the starry sky, Elle expressed her troubles. Merlin told me that true knights are brave and kind. They are not afraid of danger and will not have dirty thoughts. But I don't seem to be able to do that. At this point, there was a lovely blush on both sides of Eltolia's cheeks. She lowered her head and said awkwardly, I woke up a few days ago with a wet bed. Ah. Is this bedwetting? Ron looked at Elle in surprise and understood why she had been in a bad mood these past few days. At the age of 12, I still wet my bed. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't be happy. A 12-year-old child already has a strong sense of shame. No wonder Elle has been acting strange these days. I see. Knowing the reason makes it easier to prescribe the right medicine. Ron may not be very good at anything else, but when it comes to pouring chicken soup, in this era, no one has more experience than him, a social animal who has eaten countless chicken soups in the 21st century. Just Elle, you can easily make her return to her former energetic appearance. Moreover, it is only natural to mix some private goods in the chicken soup, right? At least Elle cannot be fooled by Merlin like the original work. At this point, Ron clarified his thoughts. He sorted out his wording and said, I don't think you need to care about this small matter. Is this a small matter? Eltolia's voice grew louder, and Ron didn't understand why her emotions suddenly became agitated. However, he still comforted her in his own way, saying, of course it's a small matter. I occasionally do this, and everyone will encounter this awkward situation. Elle, you are just an ordinary human, there is no need to treat yourself so harshly. Would Ron be the same as me? Elle couldn't help but think, could the person in his dream be me? No, no, no. It's impossible to think about it, right? In Ron's perception, I should be a man. How could he dream of a man? Thinking of the possibility of other girls appearing in Ron's dream, Elle, who has always been obedient, somehow developed a small resentment towards Merlin and King Uther, and her chest also felt a faint pain. Why can others use their real bodies to show others, while I can only disguise myself? Can't women become holy kings? So what's wrong with me? Why did you choose me? This idea startled Altolia, and she immediately suppressed the signs, repeatedly telling herself that this thought was wrong. However, Ron's words stirred up waves in Altolia's heart. He said, "Humans are inherently creatures composed of various desires, and each person has their own desires, whether good or bad, each different. Regardless of good or bad, these desires are a part of being human, and no one can deny themselves, including you. Altolise, what kind of person do you want to become?" The gentle moonlight drapes a layer of silver veil over the youth, beautiful as if in a dream. Altolia's heart quickened and she forcefully averted her gaze, afraid to look again. "I want to become a perfect knight." Facing the girl's answer, Ron neither affirmed nor criticized. "But you know, there is no perfect thing in this world," he said in a tolerant and gentle tone, patiently like a wise man who has seen the vicissitudes of the world. "The moon has its ups and downs, and people have their joys and sorrows. Perfection is just a beautiful fantasy in people's hearts about beautiful things." "In my opinion, Ron, you are perfect," retorted Altolia excitedly. "Me? Perfect?" Ron chuckled and said, "No, I'm not perfect." Before Altolia could speak, he continued, "What you see about me is just what you want to see. In fact, I also have many shortcomings. I am greedy and lazy, and if it weren't for some reason, I just want to lie at home and do nothing every day." If someone had said that, Altolia might have been angry long ago. But the person who said this is the person involved. What else can she do? I had to shut my mouth and protest silently. Ron was overjoyed and didn't expect Altolia to filter her fans so heavily. He did not waste what he showed, far exceeding the maturity and erudition of ordinary people. "Altolise, did you just say you want to become a perfect knight? It's like this. So let me ask you, is this your desire or a dream?" Altolia immediately became serious and replied, "This is my dream." "Why is it a dream, not a desire?" Ron asked again. "Because desire is bad, knights must stay away, and dreams are beautiful." "Desire is bad. Who told you?" "Merlin." "Sure enough, it's you, scumbag." Ron felt a bit angry in his heart. Is desire bad? Can you say that too? What a bastard. "Merlin, you deserve to die for stepping on a horse. P.S. 4 flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. One blade and 1 second, what's there to say? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Suppressing the urge to spray Merlin wildly, you patiently helped Altolia clarify the connection between desire and dreams. Firstly, you harshly criticized Merlin's heretical beliefs, and along with Merlin, you belittled him to nothing. Do you think that desire itself is not good or bad, and dreams are not entirely beautiful? Altolia couldn't accept it at the moment because what you said was completely different from the education she received from a young age. But unfortunately, what you said seems very reasonable, and Altolia doesn't know how to refute it at all. For example, you gave an example. A king who wanted to conquer the entire continent and make his country more prosperous and strong was his innocent childhood dream, and it was also his growing desire for power after becoming king. So, is the king's dream beautiful? Is his desire bad? Altolia's lips wriggled for a while, then opened her mouth again, but she couldn't say anything. The more knowledgeable a person is, the more they believe in unilateral speech, because they have never heard the opposite truth. The so-called academic is the truth that gradually improves through continuous dialectics. The more you argue, the clearer the truth will always be. The theory of one family can only be regarded as a reference, not as a truth. That night, you talked a lot with Altolia. The conversation continued until the sun rose and no one could be found, and it wasn't until Kai arrived at the wheat field that it ended. You tell Autolia that there is no good or bad distinction between desire and dreams themselves, only the person who has the dream can have a good or bad distinction. Desire is the driving force behind human progress. There is no need to fear it, but to accept it and make reasonable use of it. Otherwise, without desire, humans would not even have the idea of reproducing offspring. So, desire itself is not wrong. To put it simply, there is no absolute right or wrong in the world. This world is not black or white, but a delicate gray. As long as you stick to your original intention, no matter what desires you have, there is no need to forcefully suppress them. Just let it go naturally. A single night of education cannot change Autolia. Ron never thought that just one conversation could make Autolia suddenly become another person. Ideological education is urgent. Anyway, there are still 2 years left until the sword of choosing the king is drawn, so what are you in a hurry to do? Moreover, with her own advice and care by her side, Autolia can still embark on the old path. Is it true that travelers from the era of the information explosion in the 21st century are eating dry food? Perhaps Ron has weak hands-on ability, but he has rich theoretical knowledge. As long as he's here, Merlin, that old boy, don't try to mislead Autolia. For this, Ron put in practical action. Every night thereafter, he would go to Autolia's room to give her extra lessons. Over time, Autolia also began to gradually accept Ron's theory, believing that some of its merits, and even some of its principles, were more convincing than Merlin's empty words. The people are precious, and the ruler is light. Water can carry boats or capsize them. In the relatively small room, the clear voice of the young man echoed, teaching the wisdom of the Chinese people for thousands of years without reservation to Autolia. As a king, one must learn to guide the people correctly, rather than blindly following the crowd and going with the flow. You must have your own ideas. So, how should we guide the people? From a biological instinct perspective, people's greatest need is nothing more than a stable environment. Only in a stable environment can they have a sense of security and can they confidently plant farmland and reproduce offspring. A stable environment, on the one hand, stems from the country's strength, and on the other hand, it stems from sound laws. By using the law to restrain the desires in people's hearts and using powerful force to deter those with bad intentions, only then can the country maintain long-term peace and stability. Ron talked leisurely, many of which were unheard of by Autolia. This made her hesitate a bit, unsure whether to believe it or not. However, Merlin said that as a king, one must lead by example in order to guide the people towards a better future. There's nothing wrong with this statement itself, but how many people can the king lead by example affect? At most, it's just the group of confidants around him, right? Autolia's words are stuck again. She is not stupid, she was just fooled by Merlin, that's why she appears so innocent. With Ron's guidance, Autolia also realized that she used to take things too much for granted. Everyone is different, how she does it is her job, and the people below may not be willing to do it. Autolia, who had figured it out, nodded and approved Ron's theory. Ron, what you said makes sense. Please continue to teach me how to become the ideal king, teacher. Ron nodded with a smile on his face. Okay, let's continue. The night is still very long. Recently, Merlin found that her own students were somewhat abnormal. Autolia used to listen to whatever she said before, but now she has learned to think and to refute. This made Merlin feel a bit depressed and curious. Because sometimes Autolia's words make sense even to himself. What can be corrected by using copper as a mirror, by using people as a mirror to reveal gains and losses, and by using history as a mirror to determine rise and fall in just 27 words, it contains profound truths that ordinary people will never understand in their lifetime. Merlin doesn't think that Autolia can have this level behind her. There must be other experts guiding her. As Autolia began to lose faith in herself, Merlin felt a sense of crisis, believing that her teacher's position was on the verge of collapse. Therefore, he decided to use Autolia to have a close combat with that expert. The loser obediently goes away, only the winner is qualified to continue teaching Autolia. Merlin, who has lived for hundreds of years, doesn't think he will lose. He rightfully believes that he will be the ultimate winner. Merlin gets serious. Unfortunately, he didn't know what a terrifying enemy he was facing, is the wisdom of thousands of years in China that even lacks human nature, comparable to just a nightmare. You knew from the beginning that Merlin would lose in this gambling game, and he will lose completely. P.S. For flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. Isn't your blood dragon blood? Seeking. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. With the help of Elle, Merlin launched an academic offensive against Ron. This is a confrontation that is not about military force, but purely about wisdom. However, just in the first game, Merlin suffered a disastrous defeat. His problem is similar to the tram problem. Use quantity as a measure of life, place 10,000 people on a balance with one person, and let Ron make a choice. And Ron's answer is that life is equally precious, regardless of status or status. Life itself cannot be used as a bargaining chip for exchange. From the perspective of the king, even more so. We cannot exchange the lives of innocent people for the lives of others. Doing so is tantamount to trampling on the law and the dignity of life. It will also lead to internal turmoil in the country, because no one knows whether they will become the next victim. Foodie Gung can catch 10,000 today and 20,000 tomorrow. Does it mean sacrificing innocent people every time? At that time, everyone will only be in danger. So, is there still stability in this country? Merlin was speechless. He pondered for a long time on a difficult problem, but it was solved like this. Ron did not fall into his trap, but instead took a higher perspective and explained the truth to the troubled Elle. Unfortunately, Merlin couldn't find where Ron was wrong yet. After all, there is no optimal solution to this problem itself, and what Ron told Elle was just what to do from the perspective of the king. Without a doubt, he is correct. How could that be? I am the national teacher of Camelot, how could I possibly lose? In Eltolia's dream, Merlin was puzzled after listening to Ron's answer. He frowned, turned his hands behind his back several times, but still felt a bit unwilling. 2 wins in 3 games. Win me again, I'll be convinced. Elle was accustomed to Merlin's shamelessness, and it was not surprising that she honestly acted as a transmitter, providing a platform for the 2 wise men to engage in battle. Spring has passed and autumn has arrived, and in the blink of an eye, a year has passed. You have grown up another year. Fortunately, your body has finally begun to develop. Although you are still weak, you have grown quite a bit and are now almost as tall as Elle. During this period, Merlin had a total of 30.7 intellectual battles with you, and he also lost 30.7 times. No matter how difficult or indecisive the problem may be, with you, Elle can always find the best solution. And Merlin went from being stubborn at the beginning to being dissatisfied later on, becoming now amazed. He admitted that in the path of becoming king, you have surpassed the entire British people. This naturally includes him, as well as King Yus and Voltigen. Merlin, who was convinced by her words, said with emotion after her last failure, Ron, perhaps he is a born king. His thinking has approached the ideal king spoken of by me and the previous king. Strong yet wise, gentle yet not lacking in means. If Ron had a healthy body, perhaps he would be a more suitable choice than you, Lily. After speaking, Merlin smiled and shook her head, never mentioning it again. He was just joking and didn't take these words to heart. However, Elle remembered, a simple girl, with little desire for power in her heart, has never considered using her own force to act recklessly. Elle believed that the ideal king does not necessarily refer to herself, but rather to whoever is better should be appointed. You, who have received high praise from Merlin, are undoubtedly a more suitable candidate than herself in her opinion. But your flaws are just as prominent as your wisdom. People can accept a blind man as king, but they never allow the king to be so fragile that he cannot even lift a sword. The Anglo-Saxon people led by Voltagen were brutal and savage, and they were eyeing Camelot. In this era, what people needed was a powerful king who could lead the knights to victory and win all battles. You are obviously not qualified, but Elle still didn't give up. In her leisure time, she read books everywhere to learn how to enhance the physical fitness of people like you who are naturally weak. The emperor does not disappoint those who have a heart. In the end, it was Elle who found the answer in a foundational book on magic. Open the long-dusted collection of basic magic spells on the bookshelf. Elle read carefully, line by line. She wants to help Ron improve his weak physical condition, so that he can become a shining knight through cultivation like a normal person. However, Elle is not completely selfless either. The reason for doing this is not only because he believes that Ron can become a more suitable candidate for the ideal king than himself. She also wants Ron to live longer and spend more time with herself. Instead of coughing every day like now, sometimes even coughing and bleeding. Elle was very afraid that one day she would wake up and never see Ron again. Found it. As her plain white fingers slid on the page, when she saw the line that dragon blood can effectively enhance human physical fitness, Elle exclaimed in surprise, legend has it that warriors bathed in dragon blood will gain invincible bodies and their lifespan will also be extended. Ron is saved. As long as you find the dragon and take its blood, you can change Ron's weak constitution. Elle smiled happily and wanted to immediately share the good news with the young man she longed for. Until she saw the note specially marked by the author at the end, if there is no special treatment, after 15 minutes, the spirituality of dragon blood will dissipate and lose its effectiveness. Dragon slaying is already difficult, and it is a great achievement that can be written into the epic of heroes. It is even more difficult to make a weak teenager absorb dragon blood. After all, Elle can't take Ron to slay the dragon, can she? Dragon is one of the top fantasy species, and it is estimated that a hurricane that flaunts its wings at will can easily kill Ron. After weighing the pros and cons, Elle prepared to first ask Merlin if she would handle dragon blood. I don't know. Merlin, who always appeared in the dream, smiled and said, I'm just a third-rate magician who can bite his tongue even when reciting spells. How could I possibly deal with dragon blood? Merlin is lying, of course he will handle dragon blood, but he just doesn't want to do such a troublesome thing for Ron. Elle thought she was hiding well, but Merlin had already seen through it. That's it. Seeing the young girl feeling a bit disappointed, even the dull hair hanging down from her head, Merlin reminded, speaking of which, Lily, you are also a dragon. Isn't your blood dragon blood? P.S. For flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. The hardest lie to detect. Seeking collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Merlin is a semi-nightmare born from the combination of humans and nightmares. He loved humans, so he began to imitate them. In other words, his joys, sorrows, and joys were just poor imitations of humans. There is only a surface, but within there is nothing but emptiness. However, it is precisely this kind of Merlin who also has his own hobbies. He enjoys the stories in heroic epics and enjoys watching the hero come to a tragic end, which greatly satisfies his empty heart. For this reason, Merlin even spared no effort in teaching Elle for 14 years, until she saw the girl die tragically alone in the forest, and only then did she feel a little remorse in her heart. Don't misunderstand, Merlin regrets everything, but if he were to make a new choice, he would still lead Elle down the same path. Non-human monsters cannot integrate into the human world. For Merlin, it doesn't matter what King Uther, what Voltagen, including Elle. It doesn't matter who becomes the king of Camelot, everything he does comes from his bad taste. Originally, Merlin wanted to witness the end of Altolia's despair. Now, this unintentional half-nightmare seems to have discovered something even more fun. He subtly induced Altolia to use her own blood to improve your physique. Simple. Altolia didn't think too much, she just felt pleasantly surprised at the moment. So, my blood can save Ron. Altolia, who couldn't wait to leave her dream to do an experiment, didn't notice the standard smile on Merlin's face after she left. Ron, if you become king, can you save Britain from inevitable destruction? Or would you, like Lily, die in the despair and sorrow of betrayal? Interesting. It's so interesting. Let me witness your future with my own eyes. Just because she likes to eat doesn't mean she can cook. She herself is somewhat interested in how to handle ingredients, but time does not allow it. There are already enough things to learn every day, where else can you spare time to learn cooking? Thanks to Merlin's sudden reduction in class time for some unknown reason, Altolia had the opportunity to implement her plan. To be on the safe side, she was very cautious and conducted experiments on animals first. After confirming that one's blood is indeed effective, mix it with food. As for how to induce Ron to eat it, it's very simple. Just say you want Ron to try the dishes. As Altolia expected, Ron didn't ask too much and quickly swept away the food she brought. Altolise, how do you make it? Why do the same ingredients become particularly delicious in your hands? It's not flattery, Ron does think so. I can't see that Altolia, the king of stomachs, still has this talent. Even if she's not the king, she probably can travel around the world with this skill, right? Britain in the 5th century AD did not have various seasonings like in the 21st century. Although the grace of God has not faded, people do not worry about food and drink. Throwing a handful of seeds can bring a daifengshu, salad of assorted fresh vegetables, harvest. But the quality of this food Ron's evaluation is, barely able to enter. At least not like a magic stick, it can even serve as a weapon on the battlefield. Just like it. The boy's sincere praise made Altolia's heart burst with joy. She caressed the scar on her white wrist, which had already begun to scab, and felt that her efforts were worth it. Ron's smile is the best reward for Altolia. After a pause, she asked again, can I keep cooking for you from now on? Of course. The food you cook, Altolise, I think I can eat it for a lifetime. Then I'll make it for you to eat for the rest of my life. The sunlight passed through the half-closed window and shone on Altolia's beautiful profile. The girl smiled sweetly, her uncontrollable fantasies and Ron's future in her heart. Merlin once said the truth, Altolia's blood does indeed have great benefits for your body. You gradually stopped coughing, your lips turned red, and your emaciated body grew perfectly curved muscles at some point. Although not very obvious, these subtle changes cannot be concealed from you as the owner of your body. You start recalling what caused your body to become stronger day by day. Quickly, you have locked onto Altolia. I quietly followed her into the kitchen and smelled a strong smell of blood. At first, Altolia, who was discovered with a small secret, was very panicked, but she was not unprepared either. In order not to be discovered by you that she used her own blood to support you, Altolia begged Merlin for help in advance and brought a medicinal herb called dragon blood grass. This time Merlin was very reliable. He didn't want to disappear in the middle of the fun and ran across the entire British Isles, finding 2 dragon blood grasses. According to Merlin's teaching, Altolia told her first lie in life: the atmosphere in the kitchen is a bit heavy. Ron's face was very unpleasant, and he questioned, Altolise, what did you add to your food? Is it your blood? Sorry, Ron. Sorry, I don't want to lie to you. Altolia was full of shame, but for Ron's sake, she had no other choice. Actually, this is a medicinal herb called dragon blood grass. It was originally used by Merlin to nourish my body, but I think you need it more than me, so I secretly gave it to you without telling Merlin. Medicinal herbs. Upon hearing this, Ron's face softened slightly. Altolia timely handed the dragon blood grass to Ron. After smelling the same bloody smell, Ron breathed a sigh of relief. If Altolia is really using her own blood to support him, Ron really doesn't know how to face this, brother.in.law. If it's just a precious medicinal herb, then it's better. The knowledge taught by Ron to Altolia can offset it. However, is it really okay for me to use such a precious medicinal herb? Ron asked. No problem. Altolia explained. Merlin said that the fairy side has already mastered the cultivation technique of dragon blood grass. It may be less now, but the yield will increase in the future. Ron, you can eat it as a meal. That's it. Ron didn't doubt him and believed Altolia's lies. After all, for a long time, Altolia has been synonymous with honesty and trustworthiness. He never imagined that this young girl who aspired to become a perfect knight from a young age would be willing to learn how to lie for him. The most difficult lie to discern in the world is the lie told by someone who has always been honest. No one will doubt them, including Ron. P.S. Those who think it looks good, can you vote for some free flowers and tickets? Update 10,000 words every day as a baseline, and add more data if it's good. Dear author, thank you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. People call this emotion love. You are listening at novelfull.audio. One plant of dragon blood grass was left by Altolia, and the other plant was made into a dish and entered your stomach. In order to prevent you from discovering the truth, Merlin has put in a lot of effort. The dragon blood grass he found, as long as the measurement is well controlled, can have a similar effect as Altolia's blood, and your level of magic is limited, completely unaware of the fundamental difference between the two. Altolia's blood can compensate for your congenital defects, while dragon blood grass can only add icing on the cake and accelerate your recovery efficiency to a certain extent. Without your knowledge at all, Altolia would secretly cut open her wrist every week and feed you with her own blood 2 to 3 times. The girl is becoming increasingly weak, and long-term bleeding has led to slower physical development. A year has passed and I haven't grown much. If it weren't for a strong red dragon heart pressing against it, an ordinary person might have died long ago, but Altolia doesn't care. Watching you grow stronger day by day, your height keeps rising, and her face is filled with a happy smile every day. Especially when Altolia realized that you had a high talent in swordsmanship, she was even more certain of her thoughts and believed that you were the most suitable person to become the ideal king. Merlin was pleased to see it succeed, not only not opposing it, but also increasing his efforts. He began teaching the magic of Altolia and asked her to teach you this knowledge. You are also very interested in magic. After all, magicians are your main profession. Those who look down on Merlin's character may look down on him, but as a modern magician, how could you refuse the teaching of magic by a renowned sage in the divine realm? You are like a sponge, eagerly absorbing various nutrients and thriving. Immersed in the pleasure of becoming stronger, you overlook the increasingly emaciated Altolia. But all of this is being seen by another person who spends time together day and night. Kai didn't want to say much until during a practice match, he flew the wooden sword in Altolia's hand. On the training ground, 2 wooden swords collided fiercely. Without feeling the previously unstoppable monster power, Kai only exerted a slight force and flew Altolia's sword away. The wooden sword spun up into the sky, then fell and slanted into the soil. Altolia looked at her empty hands with a somewhat lost expression. After several seconds, she reluctantly smiled and congratulated Kai, saying, "Kai, your progress has been really great lately. Perhaps it won't be long before I am your opponent." If we were to be praised by Altolia as usual, Kai's tail would definitely be raised to the sky. But now, Kai, who already looks like an adult, is bowing his head and his face is very gloomy. "Kai Gu." Altolia was unaware and gently called out Kai's name. "Enough. Lily." "What? What's going on?" "Kay, who had been taking care of her two younger brothers, as her elder brother, suddenly erupted. She was so scared that Elle stuttered when speaking. With a guilty heart, she put her hand behind her and pretended to be indifferent, tentatively asking, "Kay, your complexion is very bad. Are you sick?" "Am I sick?" Kai was almost laughed at in anger. He strode forward and, taking advantage of Altolia's lack of reaction, grabbed her slender wrist hidden behind her back. Under the sunshine, the pure white skin shines brightly, like a crystal-clear Cheongji warm jade. However, the scars scattered all over it, like centipedes, have destroyed this beauty. Altolia was in a hurry and suddenly unleashed a tremendous force, pulling out her wrist and throwing Kai out, landing heavily on the ground. The next second, she quickly realized and apologized, "Kai-gu, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Really." Kai patted the dust on his buttocks and got up on his own. Falling doesn't hurt much, it's the scar on Altolia's wrist that makes him feel heartbroken. "Lily. On. You've been using your own blood to support Ron, haven't you?" Seeing Altolia fall into silence, where doesn't Kai know the truth? Kai, who inherited the fierce appearance of the Ector Knight, now sighed long like an old father and said, "Ron, does he know?" "I don't know." Altolia lowered her head and anxiously rubbed the corners of her clothes, like a child who had done something wrong. "I deceived Ron. Merlin brought me dragon blood grass, which has a medicinal effect similar to my blood. Ron didn't doubt me, and I didn't want Ron to know the truth." At this point, Altolia lifted her head and looked at Kai with pitiful eyes like a deer, pleading, "Kai, can you not tell Ron? His body hasn't returned to normal yet, I can't stop yet." Upon hearing this, Kai remained silent for a long time. "What about you? What will you do? Lily, do you no longer want to become a king?" Altolia shook her head and said, "Ron will become a more qualified king than me. All I need to do is become his knight and protect him." Talking about the future girl, her beautiful and dignified face is filled with a hopeful smile. She had already begun to fantasize about Ron standing in the crowd, surrounded by people cheering for him. They praised Ron's achievements and called him the Holy King. And he stood beside Ron, not as Altolise, but as Altolia, a young knight. Just thinking about it, Altolia felt that all her efforts were worth it. She is still too young to understand what love is. And Kai was already mature enough to see his sister at a glance, falling in love with a young man named Ron. This emotion is foolish yet sincere. Warm yet reserved. Like the morning sunshine, and like the bright moon at night. Always watching, continuously emitting warmth. Whatever you want, I hope you don't regret it in the future. And tell that bastard Merlin not to let me see him, I'll beat him up every time I see him. What else can Kai say? Angry. At first, she was indeed a bit angry, but this was a choice made by Altolia herself, and no one had the right to stop her from giving for the person she loved. Helpless Kai could only vent all his anger on Merlin. You can guess with your toes that Merlin's role in it must be disgraceful. Maybe he is the culprit. If Merlin were here, he would definitely cry out for justice. Heaven shows pity. This time, he really didn't do anything, just pushed behind the scenes. What truly makes Altolia dedicate herself like a moth to the fire is the pure and incomparable emotions in the girl's own heart. People call this emotion, love. Although the girl herself seems to have not realized it yet. P.S. For flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. The Day of King Selection. Seeking Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tyson kept his promise and did not reveal any secrets about Altolia to you. He, along with Altolia and Merlin, united to weave a beautiful lie for you. The fact proved that they succeeded, you have no doubt at all. In terms of swordsmanship, the progress visible to the naked eye every day makes you even more delighted. No one can refuse powerful forces, and of course you are no exception. After all, you need to make the most of Britain's history, gain high praise, and maximize your own strength, not to mention the power of swordsmanship and knowledge of magic that can be brought into reality through personal cultivation. How could you not study diligently? Winter has passed and spring has arrived. It's another year. Your strength is steadily improving, from not being able to hold a wooden sword before, to now even being able to suppress Kai. Altolia's blood has subtly changed your physique, giving you some of the traits of a high-level dragon species. For example, the innate monster power of dragon creatures, as well as the terrifying magic that fills them. Your fragile heart is transforming towards the direction of the red dragon's heart, and every breath and swallowing can generate a large amount of magic for you to use in a battle with Altolia. You successfully used your magic to release and almost destroyed the entire training ground, that is the same source as the holy sword, pure white and warm light. Brilliant and brilliant, just like the master who uses this magic. Altolia is sincerely happy for you. Her efforts have yielded gratifying results, and now you may not even be a match for her legitimate red dragon. Of course, it's not that you're really strong enough to defeat Altolia, it's just that she has been in a weak state due to continuous bleeding. Converted to the Knights of the Round Table, your strength should be only inferior to that of Gawain at noon and the strongest Knight of the Round Table, Lancelot. But you are already very satisfied and not greedy. Because you are only 12 years old this year, while Altolia is 14 years old, and the oldest Kai is already 18 years old. You know, it's not far from the king's selection ceremony. Taylorville, where Ron lived, was a fortress city in the volcano territory under the rule of the Camelot Kingdom. When it comes to a city, it is actually a small town with a relatively small resident population. But recently, when Ron and the others went out on the street, they could sense that there were more knights in armor coming and going in the small town. They either compare their martial arts skills, or boast about their own strength to the admiring teenage girls, and occasionally fabricate nightly stories that no one knows are true or false, causing a lot of applause. As for the purpose of these knights gathering in groups in this small town, it is very simple. The day of selecting the king is approaching. According to Merlin, whoever can draw the sword from the stone is the new king of Camelot. Former King Hughes also agreed with this statement before his death. Many ambitious knights, or knights who yearn for glory and have confidence in themselves, naturally do not want to miss this grand event. Which young person doesn't want to shine brightly? Don't want to leave a name in history? Knights are also humans, and they will have their own pursuits. Becoming a king not only brings fame, but also power and benefits. How can people not flock to it? It's just a pity. Ron Cave gazed at the radiant faces of the knights as if watching the fire. They thought everyone had a chance, but in reality, who could become Wang had a reservation. Merlin and King Uther were just delaying time until Altolia grew up. That's why they came up with a day to choose the king, in order to increase the reputation of the immature Altolia. In fact, Merlin and King Uther's plan was very successful. After Altolia drew her sword from the stone, a group of knights who admired her powerful martial arts immediately gathered around her, including some Round Table knights, who were also subdued in this way. Altolia doesn't know what you're thinking, and similarly, you don't know what she's thinking. The girl who was originally destined to be king has shed her heavy burden and is determined to become your guardian knight, but she learned from your conversation that you have no intention of becoming a king. This is causing some distress for Altolia, not knowing how to persuade you to draw your sword. Merlin, this villain, enthusiastically came up with a bad idea for Altolia. Do you want Ron to draw his sword, Lily? Merlin, do you have any good ideas? Of course, who do you think I am? I am the national teacher of Camelot and a guest of your father King Uther. Merlin boasted confidently, just Ron, I only need a little trick to make him obediently go and draw his sword. But Merlin, so far you haven't won against Ron once, said Altolia with a troubled expression on her face. I'm already different from before. Merlin shouted loudly, this time, I will definitely win. After speaking, he didn't give Altolia another chance to express his feelings and left angrily. In the following days, Merlin did not appear again until the night before the day of the king's election, when he reconnected with Altolia. Listen Lily, I already have a good idea. This time, Merlin did not appear in the dream, but came to Hector's estate in person to meet Altolia and Kai, who had not yet woken up and looked confused. As long as you and Kai cooperate with me, I can definitely make Ron obediently go and draw his sword. What method is it? Altolia asked curiously. Although I still feel that Merlin is a bit unreliable, I can only rely on him now. It's very simple. Merlin snapped her fingers, looking very proud and lacking in punches, causing Kai's fists to itch a bit. As soon as it's light, I'll tell Ron because he took away some of the dragon blood grass, and your strength didn't reach its peak at the scheduled time, she said. If Fudi Gung knew who the true son of the Red Dragon was, he would definitely send someone to assassinate him. In order to make up for you, Ron will definitely agree to pull out the sword from the stone and temporarily replace you as the King of Camelot. After thinking for a moment, Altolia asked, what if Ron wants to return the throne to me in the future? Then you can be his queen. Anyway, you're a married couple. It doesn't matter who becomes the king, right? Wang. Princess. Merlin's light words made Altolia blush and her heart almost jump out. She shook her head repeatedly and refused. How can someone like me become a princess? I just need to be Ron's guardian knight. Upon hearing this, Kai let out a deep sigh. During this period, he sighed so many times that he couldn't even count. Silly little sister, you will regret doing this in the future. Then you can become a guardian knight. Merlin said nonchalantly, anyway, let's first deceive Ron into the throne. Altolia and Kay exchanged a glance and nodded silently, acknowledging Merlin's bad idea. The day of choosing the king is tomorrow, and time is running out. Let's talk about things in the future. The most important thing now is to have Ron draw his sword. Becoming the King of Camelot. P.S. 4 flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. In front of me, who will draw the sword? Seeking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. According to the plan, as soon as dawn broke, Merlin, who lacked virtue, found you. He told you with a heavy heart that due to the lack of nourishment from dragon blood grass, Altolia was unable to reach her peak state on the day of king's selection. Fudi Gung is ambitious, and if he discovers that the power of the red dragon is insufficient, he will inevitably launch a comprehensive attack. At that time, Camelot will be in danger. Merlin's words were tearful and touching. If it were an ordinary person, he would probably have fooled me so much that I couldn't find the north. However, you, who are well aware of Merlin's nature, did not fully believe his lies. Seeing this, Merlin gave a glance to Altolia and Kay, and the two of them worked hard to cooperate with Merlin, urging you to draw your sword. You know Merlin is malicious, but unfortunately, Altolia herself has said so, and you have indeed received a lot of favor from the girl, so you cannot shirk it. It's the hardest to please a beautiful woman. Altolia saved you with her dragon blood grass, how could you bear to disappoint her? In the end, you agreed to draw your sword. Merlin changed her mournful face and happily assured you, don't worry, no one can pull out this sword except you. You applied magic on it, right? You gave Merlin a contemptuous glance and snorted coldly, what a despicable guy. I don't know if you're talking about Merlin's use of magic or his use of Altolia's kindness to you to morally kidnap you. As long as you can win, that's enough, isn't it? In the face of your insults, Merlin is not ashamed, but rather proud, he proudly straightened his chest and repeated what you once said. As a king, one should not resort to any means. That's what you said, Ron. I'm just practicing your theory. You squinted your eyes, and the lake blue blind eye stared at Merlin for a while before dropping the sentence, when I become the king, the first thing I will do is kill you, ... Then, no longer looking at Merlin's annoying face, we went to the election ground with Altolia and Kay. The three of them were not moving fast. A sharp contrast was formed with the knights rushing around in a hurry. Firstly, they all knew that Merlin had used magic on the stone sword. Except for those with the red dragon factor, even if they could shake the mountain peak, they could not pull the stone sword out of the stone base. Secondly, Kai and Altolia apologize for their alliance with Merlin to deceive Ron. Although they are kind-hearted, Ron himself doesn't want to be the king, does he? In a sense, this is equivalent to irresponsibly shifting the burden that should have been borne by Altolia to Ron. This makes the siblings feel uneasy about their conscience. Therefore, no one spoke along the way. Until arriving at the destination, Kai, who was assimilated by the lively atmosphere of crowds, spoke his first sentence, breaking the awkward atmosphere between the three of them. Many people. Did Camelot have so many powerful knights? You should be worried about this, Kai. Since Ron decided to draw his sword, he leaned his mind as much as possible towards the direction that a king should have. He did not receive any influence and calmly analyzed, you see, such a powerful Camelot was being suppressed and attacked by the army of the King of Bei. Of course, there was a reason why there were no leaders and no one to lead the knights. But the fundamental reason is that the power held by the King of Bei Wang is far stronger than we imagine. Leaving aside the King of Bei himself, it is not easy to provoke the group of Saxons under the command of Fudigung alone. Everyone is a deity, how much higher can the average quality of Celts be compared to Saxons? It's better to say that most Celts are not as skilled in battle as Saxons who live in harsh environments. Kai glanced at Ron in surprise, not realizing that this usually gentle and polite younger brother still had this insight. No wonder Lily and Merlin both recognize him as the King of Camelot. As you said, the pressure brought to the kingdom of Camelot by the Votigens and the Saxons is too great. Even though the northern kings formed a united front to completely block them out of the front line, the people of Camelot still held a fear towards the lowly King Fudigung and his brutal army. They urgently need a powerful king to lead them out of the darkness. Therefore, the day of the selection of the king received such attention, even the nobles agreed to choose the King of Camelot in this joking way. Otherwise, what else can be done? Let the nobles carry their own cavalry guns and fight against Fudigung. Don't joke, they don't have the courage. You are well aware of the current situation of Camelot. Even though you have never been out of the house before, you still have the ability to see big from small things just by observing the performance of these knights. You know how bad Carmelo's situation has become. To put it bluntly, even if you find out tomorrow that Fudigung has already attacked, you won't find it any strange. In this era, the name Votigen is the nightmare of all Celts. Make them feel scared about it. Under the pressure of survival, choosing a king is imperative. A group of knights surrounded the stone base, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, all staring passionately at the magnificent king's sword inserted on it. However, Merlin, who was responsible for presiding over the election ceremony, had not yet spoken, and the knights could only restrain the restless hearts in their chests. Merlin maintained a friendly smile and scanned the crowd, only pausing slightly on Ron for a moment. Then, he withdrew his gaze and loudly said, I have made a contract with the former King Yus, and the one who draws the sword from the stone is the King of Camelot. At this moment, in front of me, who will draw the sword? Who will draw the sword? Pulling out this sword, one must face the fierce and ruthless, immensely powerful King Fudigung. Who dares to draw their sword? Merlin did not mention Votigen, but the knights themselves thought of the white-bearded old man who was as majestic and violent as a lion. For a moment, the originally hot atmosphere suddenly cooled down. The knights looked at each other, waiting for the first warrior to come forward. Soon. A tall knight wearing silver armor walked up to Merlin. "I'll do it." Merlin nodded with a smile and moved away, indicating that he could start. The tall knight grabbed the hilt with both hands and used all his strength to pull it upwards. However, the holy sword seemed to have taken root. Not even a little shaking. He failed and was not qualified to become the destined king. P.S. 4 flowers, for evaluations, for all data. P.S. Feeding flowers, evaluating tickets, and monthly tickets can accelerate the update speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.